Hey everybody, Larry, Fort Worth Memories Museum and Groups. It is Tuesday, Halloween.
Tuesday, Valentine's.
Valentine's Day.
Yeah, Halloween,
I
Valentine's.
guess it could be Halloween depending on who your Valentine is, you know.
I had a thought of something that was Halloweenish. Anyway, so
Happy Halloween, Larry.
happy Halloween. Rick and Mary are here, and y'all's special guest is.
Yeah, well, this is Misty Kadow.
Yes.
And Misty is a veteran. She's retired Air Force major. So, and her ties to all this is that Mary's husband Dave works at you work at Lockheed for the DCMA.
Yep. Defense Contract Management Agency.
Okay,
Yes.
say that again. Defense
Contract
okay.
Management Agency.
And so you actually work for the government.
Yes.
And you're kind of an overseer at Lockheed.
Yes.
But she doesn't look old enough to have already served and retired over 30 years. How many years total?
31.
Okay, 31 years. She was in the Air Force,
Yes.
the Air Force Reserve, Louisiana
Air National Guard. And
National Guard, and the Texas
National
State. You were in the Texas National Guard, and was it the Texas Air National Guard
Yes.
too, or something?
Yeah, I was stationed down in Houston, and then I was up here in Fort Worth as well.
And so you bring a lot of experience with you because you've been deployed to Afghanistan.
Yes, sir.
What are some of the other places?
I've been to Saudi Arabia, I've been to Singapore, Indonesia, Japan, Alaska, Norway, Iceland, Sweden, pretty much everywhere.
You've been around.
I've been around. I've had a few interesting. Oh, Hungary was the best trip ever. So we actually got deployed to Hungary because they were doing like some NATO surveys over there. And when we got deployed there, out front of the hotel was the Hungarian Wine Festival. They had never seen Americans drink, and we were Americans from New Orleans.
Oh my God.
Yeah, the 159th put a hurt on the Hungarian wine industry that year. So, but it was a 30-day festival, and we were like, game on.
And you're a native from Alabama.
Yes.
But you said your first duty assignment in the Air Force was
Grand Forks, North Dakota.
North Dakota, and you said it was like
It's
being-
Alabama, but with snow.
Alabama
So
was.
you
I've
didn't-
never heard of it called that before.
You didn't have to
That's
go far
interesting.
to
Yep.
feel at home,
Rednecks
did
and
you?
trucks, that's all we got.
Rednecks and trucks.
Yeah. And so, what do you do for the DCMA?
So
at
I'm a
Lockheed?
quality assurance supervisor for
Okay.
missile defense. So we work Patriot missiles, THAAD, ATACMS, HIMARS, MLRS. So everything you see in the Ukraine right now is our babies that are over there right now. So we've been, we oversee it. So when you look at Defense Contract Management Agency, we oversee every defense contract that's written. And so unless we are written out of it, according to the federal acquisition regulations, we've got to be there. And so there's always one of us out there watching them do what they're doing and ensuring that, whatever we deliver to the warfighter is, the actual item that they're supposed to be getting. Because, if you've seen war dogs and things like that, sometimes the contractor may or may not be doing the right thing. So
Stuff happens.
stuff happens.
And this is Lockheed Missile Systems in Grand
Yes.
Prairie. So,
Yes.
whenever we talk about Lockheed, sometime we think about the
F-35,
aeronautical,
yeah, F-16s. You always
division.
think about, all their
But-
aviation.
But there's another Lockheed that's in Grand Prairie, the Missile Systems, because there's a lot of people that go back and forth between the two.
Yes.
Well, they own the helicopter deal now too, don't they?
Don't they?
I know Sikorsky has part of
Sikorsky,
it, and,
yeah.
and Bell Helicopters out here in Arlington. I worked for them as well, and so there was.
You have worked for
Yes,
them?
Bell
Okay.
Helicopter.
Okay.
Yeah, we were DCMA over them as well. So when I came out to Texas, that's where I first worked, and that is a really interesting place because they're like 80% internal manufacturing and 20% outsourced, which most manufacturing facilities now are 80%, in suppliers and 20% internal. So when you see something made from Bell Helicopter, they're making it in-house, and it's very impressive.
And that's back in the old days. I retired from Lockheed,
Mm-hmm.
but back whenever it was General Dynamics, probably 95% of the F-16s we were building were built right there in the factory. I mean, we had the hammer house and made all the parts, the drop hammer dies, had our own anodizing. And I mean, from start to finish, it was a Fort Worth made product. But now, with the F-35, F-22, we started outsourcing
Yes.
a lot of things. I remember whenever I first saw that term, about outsourcing and things, and But, the beauty of that, Larry, is that because they outsource the way they do, they have all these major contractors in all the key political districts around the country. Plus, we have all the co-producers in all around the world for the F-35. So it's not just a deal, hey, we're going to cut this program. It's a deal of how are we going to cut it? Because, the guy that's the head of the military appropriations on the Senate or whatever, his district's probably pretty heavily involved in the manufacturing. And then you have all our sister nations, and they're all involved. So it's not just like pull the plug like they did on the A-12 whenever I worked there. So, but there's a lot of stuff that goes on in aviation.
Yes.
Now, you had two careers going at one time.
Yes.
So you had that job, and then you were in Air Force Reserves, and then the Guard. But your recent, you were in a different Guard unit than the 136 whenever
Yes.
you were at Conroe
Yes.
during COVID.
I was at the 147th, yeah. So
Okay.
the 147th, we were Predators and Reapers. And so and that's what I tell people, my career has been so interesting. I've got to do regular airframes, regular aircraft, and then when I got to move to the 147th, that's the future of aviation. The Predators and the Reapers, those are aircraft that have traveled all over the world, but we're sitting in the connexes, running stuff out of the GCU, and went to GCU as a ground control unit. So that's where we're running things from a box in Texas and at the war in Afghanistan at the same time.
Those are drones.
Yes. Well, don't ever call them drones. Oh, those pilots get upset. It's remotely
Unmanned.
piloted aircraft.
Okay.
Yes,
Oh my
yes,
God.
RPAs.
A drone would be like the Global Hawk. So the Global Hawk, once it takes off, it has a computer that tells it where to go, and it gives it it has coordinates. So it's not manned by a human being. So one of my best, most interesting trips that I ever took was over in Italy, and I got to go. You have to go down the flight line and check the flight line to make sure nothing's on it, because that drone can't see. So it's like you have to go check the flight line. A human being has to go look at it. And this is the first time I've ever driven on a flight line when it's an active runway, knowing an aircraft's incoming. But you have to go check to make sure there's no animals, no debris, and no anything. And then you get off, and then the aircraft lands. And it lands itself. But with the Reapers and the Predators, those are remotely piloted aircraft. So a pilot actually takes off and lands. So you'll hear it called launch and recovery. There will be an actual pilot that is piloting that. Even though it's remotely piloted, there's a human being doing that.
And they're like real live pilots.
Yes,
too.
they are.
And
Well, and they did. So in recent years, though, they have allowed some enlisted to start doing some of the work in with the remotely piloted. So it was
We always
really
have an
interesting.
enlisted sensor operator.
Yep.
So the person that's watching the camera and actually targeting and stuff like that is the one that's is a enlisted person, and then you'll have the pilot itself that's actually
it's
pulling
kind
the
of probably
trigger.
like a combat control guy.
Very
that's
much.
doing that. So he's probably inside there watching everything, because those Predators, they have those missiles and things.
Yes,
don't
they do.
And,
Yep.
and they can cause a lot of damage to
Yes.
the enemy. So
Yeah, the Predator can only carry a small amount of weapon systems, but the Reaper can carry like Hellfires and GBUs at the same time.
yeah.
So it's a very impressive aircraft, and it can fly for 22 hours. So if you've got to wait out a target, you can wait as long as you need to. So you've got a lot of time and resources and capabilities with the long range aircraft like that.
That's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
But whenever you were in that unit, they were doing that, but you were deployed because it was a state.
So what happened in that scenario, that was during COVID. So in most situations, like I got out of maintenance because I've been deploying for 30 years. I was done. I'm like, I'm going to join the Inspector General office so I don't have to deploy. It's a non-deployable seat. Immediately after I did that, probably I was in there 6 months, we wound up having COVID. The world shuts down, right? Well, while the world's shutting down, we also had that crash of the oil industry. So people lost their jobs. Nobody could go get food. Nobody could work in the service industry. So you had a massive amount of people that had no food and had no way of getting food and had no way of getting money. So what do? Well, we're going to deploy the Guard. Well, the Guard winds up getting deployed to this was the Montgomery County Food Bank, but all the food banks like in Houston and up here in Fort Worth, everywhere we had Guard people in there. So the funny thing about that, and the reason the article got written by DCMA is because everybody deployed, so they weren't impressed with the fact that I deployed, right? They were like, oh, great, another person in the military deployed. They were like, but I told them, I said, no, what was different in that particular food bank, they had some manufacturing and so we do lean manufacturing at DCMA. So that's one of the things we teach our guys, like how do you find out to do a process faster with less steps. So when you're going into a food bank and they have things set up incorrectly because they don't know any better, they're just trying to get food to people. When we look at it, we're looking at how can I get the food to people faster, better, and more efficiently without having so many steps. So like if you put a tractor truck and you load, the milk in the front, and you put the produce, you put something else, and you're having to drop off at multiple places, if you don't put it in there correctly, then you wind up having to make multiple trips and have multiple stops. So we worked and did a whole safety program for those guys because their safety protocols were not robust enough. And so for me, if I'm taking 42 of my guys in there, and if you're not safe, then I'm not coming in. So you either let me take over the safety program and fix it, or we don't come back. And so we did that. We walked around the entire place, and I was showing them things. I'm like, okay, so this is called a fire hydrant. You can't park a truck in front of a fire hydrant. And it's like, this is called an emergency exit. We can't put pallets in front of an emergency exit. When rust is coming out of the Iowa station, that's dangerous. Let's not do that. So we went through the entire facility, from top to bottom, establishing their safety protocols. We taught, they had 27 employees, so we taught all them exactly how to do it. It was at 59,000 square feet, and so we put governors back on their forklifts and stuff because they were driving around those forklifts in a rate of speed that I considered to be less than safe. And so I showed them videos of here's what a cascading failure in a warehouse looks like. You don't want to have one of your guys accidentally hit this because you're trying to save people, right? That's the intent. You're trying to get food to children. Cause we were delivering food to schools because while the kids were out of school, they weren't getting their free lunches and stuff like that. So all of the stuff that you would normally give to the kids, they weren't getting. So they would have to get that when we were doing this stuff. So we would set up lines, we would set up distribution points. And I know we increased their distribution points to 16 a week to 24 a week. So each time that we were able to get out there, we're just, efficient. And that's, you've got military people that have, thousands of hours of training in supply chain management and, how to do configuration management, how to establish. And you also got young people that have, bodies that hadn't been broken yet that can work harder and faster, because
Right.
Most of the people that go and work in the food banks are older or they're doing it as a volunteer thing. So they don't have that same capability. And, our guys worked really, really hard, long hours with no air conditioning to make sure that we got food out to the public. And it was impressive. It was amazing, some of the things that we were
So
able
you
to
not
do.
only just offered the manpower, but all your knowledge and expertise
Yeah.
to help them do a better job at getting food.
Well,
And
the other thing I taught them, with the contract management. So I'm a contract expert, right? So that's what I do in my civilian job. So when I'm talking to the guy, I'm like, okay, let's say, and this can be, it seems small when you're looking at it, but some of the bags weren't sealed properly. So when you have a bag, and this was delivered by the FDA, so the FDA, or not, USDA, so USDA contract for that. If you buy this from a manufacturer and the manufacturer gives it to you and it's not complete, then as a person that has a contract, you're supposed to get something for that. Past that, the guy at that place that's delivering those dates or walnuts or whatever it is, he doesn't know his piece of equipment's malfunctioning. So if you tell that person, hey, this is malfunctioning and you need to get this piece of equipment fixed, then he can go back and find out the date and lot number where that came from, go to his manufacturing floor, find out what machine it was on, then find out, okay, that machine needs to be serviced. So it's not just about getting your money back, getting the right product. It's also about making sure the manufacturer can deliver better product to the rest of the world, because they're trying to get food to people. They don't want to give you bad product. And
Right.
but if you don't tell the manufacturer, you got a problem back here, on the left side, third machine to the right. If you don't tell them, they don't know how to fix it. So that expertise that I have fixes a lot of things.
and it saved them a lot of money.
It does,
Because
yeah.
they would have had to bring in experts, and here they have them right there.
Yep.
And you served over 1 million meals during that period, 3-month period that
Yes.
you were there, didn't you?
Yes, sir, we did. We served, and I can't even tell you, once you look at the amount that we did, we did these things called backpack buddies where we were getting, food to kids, and then we had senior meals that we put together, so there was boxes for seniors. So it was across the board, the people that were affected. And during COVID, it's it doesn't matter if you're an ophthalmologist, if you're a hairdresser, if you're a waitress or you're an oil field worker, it didn't matter.
Right.
Everyone's business was shut down. And one of my guys had said, well, the guy's coming through here with a Range Rover. It doesn't matter if he has a Range Rover. If he was a doctor and now he can't open his business, he no longer has cash coming in, so he can't, pay his employees. So you can't get the money for the Range Rover or a Rolex or an iPhone now. You need food. And so it was a great equalizer, and I think it was an opportunity to teach people. It's like, don't judge what's coming through here because you don't know their
Right.
circumstances.
Exactly.
And we had to take like our uniforms off for certain locations because we would have undocumented personnel that would come through there. So they didn't want us to scare off people that needed food.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things. I don't care where you're from, who you are. If you need food, we're going to get you food. So, kids are hungry, and it doesn't matter if you're documented or not. If you need food, we're going to get it. So we did make sure that there were certain places where we didn't wear uniforms so they wouldn't be, threatened or frightened, thinking that, oh, that's an authority figure. So we made sure that we took care of those people as well.
And where was your unit, where was it located? Where were you normally going to your drills and stuff?
We were down in Houston, so we were down in, it's down past, I think it's called Webster, Texas, and so like it's technically Houston, but we're down in Webster, and so we're on the other side. Well, we got to Conroe, and this is a funny story that, my guys always made fun of it. So when we got up there, we wound up, I think it was like the Spring Hill Suites or something. We were going to stay there for a month, but it was smaller rooms and smaller refrigerators. I'm like, y'all, I don't think this is going to work. We're going to, I'm bougie, I need something bigger. So we went to the Residence Inn, which was nice and it was better, but we had some issues with people taking pictures of our guys coming and going, so that felt unsecure. So eventually we got to the Embassy Suites down there in, it's called the, I can't remember the name, but it's in Conroe. We got to the Embassy Suites, and when we got there, they were like, "Oh, we don't have the bar open. Is it okay if we bring drinks to your room?" You know what? We're
Like
going to
manna from
sacrifice.
heaven, huh?
We will sacrifice this time. So, my guy's like, "You moved us 4 times," and I'm like, "But did I not get you the best hotel that we could possibly get in Conroe, Texas? We got the best hotel." But Conroe, and we were away from our duty location, so and we brought people down from all kinds of different locations. So it didn't matter where you were stationed or where you lived, people just showed up. And the only thing I would do different if I could rearrange these things is find out where do people live and where do we need to put them that's closest to them. Like I could have worked out of the food bank here in Fort Worth and not left my house. And so I would have been able to come over here and not had to go to Conroe. So I think, when we do these things, if we could take the whole state and break it up and say, okay, where does this person live? If I've got this many military people here already, let's use them, whether the Army, Air Force, Marine, whatever, let's use the people that are in that location. So that way we don't have to pay the travel expenses. We don't have to do all of the per diem. So there's a lot of money that could be saved if we look at it more in a, where do you live, where do you work kind of thing versus where are you stationed.
And
Yeah.
so that's-
We do a lot of things jointly as is. Why not do that?
Yeah.
To
did
your
you make
point,
that
save a lot of
suggestion?
money.
I mean, did it get very high?
I make suggestions, but at the time it was like crisis management.
Okay.
Just get people in there, get them to the food banks, and there wasn't an opportunity to sort it out at that point. It's kind of like what's happening with the border. So we had a unit there in Brownsville. That Brownsville unit was deployed to El Paso. At that time I was at the Fort Worth unit. We went from Fort Worth down to Brownsville. Why wouldn't we go to El Paso and leave the guys in Brownsville? So there's still a lot of that happens where people are put in locations and are deployed from where they are when we need them to actually work in the location where they live.
That might be an interesting question for our friend General Pottinger, because
Absolutely.
he's the chairman of the Texas Military Preparedness Commission for Governor Abbott. So we'll ask you, Kevin, pretty soon to look into that, because that is an interesting thing to
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
about.
Yeah, and you would want to do it ahead of time because
Of
you've got to
course.
think about operational control and administrative control and all those things that people outside the military don't understand about. So if I've got somebody here, but they're not in my unit, then who has which control over them if they get in trouble or if they need emergency leave? There's all kinds of other things that go into it.
Yeah.
So it is an important
And
thing,
especially
and
with the
something should
Texas
be
Guard.
fleshed out right, because you've got Texas Guard all over, and to your point, we've got Air National Guard, we've got Army Guard, so you take all these guys and you make more sense out of it and establish a policy, and our wonderful friend Potts certainly is in a position to do something
So
with
here's my
that.
plan. So we did this in Louisiana. So Louisiana, as y'all saw, Hurricane Katrina happened. We got our butts handed to us because we weren't prepared. We weren't ready. We weren't even asked to do it. Air National Guard had never been in the emergency preparedness at that point. Now, the Army National Guard was in Iraq, so we had to take over that position. So we show up, we're down there, we have people in the Superdome, trying to facilitate things, but there wasn't any, resources. We didn't know how to get things in there. It was just a cluster. So we go fast forward to Gustav. So Gustav happens. We still have problems We had contractors that were going to drive the buses to get the people out. The contractors left. So then guess what? We weren't prepared, we weren't trained, we weren't ready, but we went, drove the buses. So we got people out of harm's way, picked them up wherever they were at, and got them to, forward locations. While doing that, we weren't ready for it, we weren't trained, we didn't have medical personnel with us, and medical emergencies happened on the bus. So things like that needed to be identified. So the next hurricane, we start prepping, we start planning. It's called Virtual Louisiana now, where they do every year, they do a exercise where we plan. If a hurricane is going to hit A, B, or C location, where are the people? So if you live in Monroe, Louisiana, you go work at the shelter in Monroe. If you live in Four Squares out in the middle of, or Lake Charles, if you live out there, that's where you're going to work in one of those locations. If you're in New Orleans, you're going to go to the airport. So they stopped bringing people down to work in a location and then send people up. So they did start identifying that in Louisiana. I know Texas hates when I bring up Louisiana has successfully figured something out, but but at the same time, take the information from other places and start learning from what they figured out. So when we figured a lot of things out, people from New Jersey started coming to us. People from Haiti started coming to us. So when we would have our exercises, it was so realistic that people thought, like, is this happening? Like, they're watching the
The
screens
wind was
and
blowing
things.
and the rain was coming down. It was that
They really
realistic.
thought it was happening as we were showing it. They're like, no, this is what happened last time. We're just replaying it to see what will you do. And we were all in the same room. So if you need wildlife and fisheries, because different people have control over different things. So the state police would have control over the highways. The wildlife and fisheries had control over boats if we had to go in and get things. Then there would be someone else that had the helicopters, because if you have to lift fuel, you got to find out, does it have a belly? We need a belly band? Does it have hooks? There's all these questions. If you need a generator, in my mind, it's a crank generator, right? No. We need a 1,000,000-watt generator, so this is going to be on a tractor trailer. Where's the concrete? Can you put it in there? We don't want it to sink. I mean, there's a million questions. But all this has to happen ahead of time.
Yep.
And you've got to identify, and people tell me, like, oh, well, that'd be too hard. Isn't it too hard to do it wrong than to do it right the first time and figure out how do you fix all the problems and, lay it flat. If this happens, what's our plan? And so, y'all will appreciate this. So I started writing my dissertation. So I was doing Air Command Staff College. So I started writing my dissertation, and they told me I couldn't do it because there's not enough about it. Well, I get there's not enough about it, but this is the only thing I care about. So this is what I'm writing about. So my whole dissertation is written about, the National Guard being tasked with things, and we're not properly trained or equipped to do what's out there. There are training classes, there are capabilities, but what do we do during drill? During every, unit training assembly, we work on the federal mission, things that we need to do. Whether it's, your biological chem warfare, whether it is, dealing with, your P-test you got to do, your health and fitness, we do all those things. But we don't focus on what do we normally do every single time that we have a emergency, disaster preparedness. And like I told them, I said, what I would do if it was me and if I was king for a day, I would have one drill, we do emergency preparedness. The next drill, we do the federal mission. Then, and we would just swap that off because 100% of the time when I've done something, it's on a disaster or an emergency. When I went to Afghanistan, I went to Afghanistan, for the war and stuff like that, and that was for the Air Force Reserves, but I was prepared and ready for that. But when I went to deal with stuff with Katrina, when I went to deal with stuff with Gustav, with, was it Rita, and like all the different hurricanes, I wasn't prepared for that. When I went to the border, I wasn't prepared for that. There's ways for us to get ready for the state mission and for the emergency preparedness, and that was what my whole dissertation was written on. So I got 47 pages of here's what we ought to do. But we'll see if it ever gets any traction and if we ever get to the point where we equip and train the Guard for what they need to do versus what we expect them to do. Because 100% of the time you will have a disaster. I can guarantee you next year we're going to have a disaster. We're going to have another, what was the oil spill that we had? We're going to have that. We're going to have a freeze. We're going to have a hurricane. We're going to have a tornado. I guarantee you next year we're going to have that. I don't know that next year we're going to have a war that we got to go fight. So I need to have my guys equipped and trained and capable of doing the disaster work that I know they're going to do.
Not just at the state level like the state guard, but at the national level too.
We've had people fight fires. Avionics troops out there fighting fires in Oregon. When was he trained to fight a fire? We're going to do it because y'all know we're going to show up. We're going to make it happen. I've done sandbags. I've done all kinds of things that I never God, what was one of them? We were living in, I think it was Lamar Dixon. So we were living in a livestock shelter, and that's where we were doing food distribution out there. We had tarps, we had ice, we had water, but you have to figure out, and there's things you have to talk about and help the people with. if I've got diabetics, they need the ice. So I need to make sure that the guy that get put in his cooler for his beer is not getting the ice when the guy that has, diabetes needs the ice.
Right.
So there's lots of things that you have to, find out what do you got to do when you're dealing with MREs. MREs are very high in sodium because they're meant for someone that's out there in the field that needs to, maintain water. But that's not for someone that has diabetes and has, high blood pressure. So there's a lot of those conversations that we don't have with the individuals as we're there. One of the guys built us an igloo when we were out there because, like, the ice, if you stack it the right way, you can make an igloo inside there to keep people from getting heat exhaustion while we're out there. But this isn't something that's shared knowledge. No one writes that, like, hey, here's how you should do this. And so it's interesting to try to get that knowledge from the individuals that are doing it into a training mechanism to make sure that everybody has that.
So we can be more effective.
Yes.
Yep. Yep.
I really like the idea about moving the people, not taking them here to go there whenever you've got the same
And we
people working
do it all the
here.
time.
And think how much money it costs the
That's like the
government.
Per
hotel.
diem,
To do
hotels,
that.
all
Right.
that. Yeah, there's hundreds of thousands of dollars, millions of dollars.
And you're taking them away from their family at a time when their family needs that support too.
And you could be working here in the community in which that you live in,
Right.
which impacts you even more because these are your people versus taking you to another location where there are people that already live there that could be running that. So it's interesting to try to get that. It's a
balance that you have to have.
well, and you get into the habit of we've always done it this way, So breaking that thought process and that stigma of change the way we're doing it so that we find the most efficient, effective way. And again, it goes back to my DCMA roots: lean manufacturing, less steps, less movement. If you
Yeah.
can do it more efficiently, find the efficiencies.
Right.
And so my whole job, is like, continuous process improvement. And so that's what I'm always looking at. How do I do this better? Not how do I do it? How do I do it better? Because I can take a bunch of people and take them out in the field and do something. But do I need to take those people? Were there other people that were the right fit for this job? And so I think we've lost that a little bit and we just send bodies.
And then it's hard to take an idea like yours and move it all the way up the chain of command to
Right.
the people that are actually going to make the decisions. But just like, one thing that you were talking about, like in Monroe and having these different shelters inland,
Yes.
as opposed to right on, because I always think about the shelters being along the coast. Just take them over here and take them to Baton Rouge or something. But you have all these shelters, even in Oklahoma and other places, that we have to man
Yep.
too. But on the National Guard, the State Guard, their charter or whatever is to serve the United States and then serve the state of Texas. So the governor's got a certain amount of authority over the State Guard, but yet the United States government also has some authority too. Because your equipment, it's all coming
all
from the
federal.
national level, from federal down to the state level. So
Yep.
there's a lot of politics in that for sure. But you're kind of pulled sometime between, the state has its needs and the national government has their needs, and
Well, the big thing they don't ever talk about, and this is one of the things, is back to the contract management. We have a contract. The state can do a contract with the federal government saying, I need to use these assets. I will pay you X amount of dollars for doing that. And we've done that in different manufacturing formats where, there was a specific machine at NASA that we had that the state of Louisiana, Louisiana State University, the Navy, and then NASA also used, and everybody shared it, but you had to pay if you were going to use that machine. You had to pay for the time on it. Same thing with a Humvee, ammo, rifles. You have to pay to be able to use that for a certain period of time because it's already been paid for by the federal government. The state can then do a contract saying, hey, I will pay you this amount of money in order to utilize these assets for this time. If nothing happens to it, it doesn't get damaged, it doesn't get destroyed or anything like that, no harm, no foul. Yeah, there was hours put on like an engine or whatever if it's a Humvee, but the item itself is still usable and capable. So there's ways to use federal assets for state missions. It's just trying to get past the stigma of, well, we can't do that. And as I tell people, this is one of my favorite quotes. I'm like, no is where we start negotiating. No is not an answer. That's always like somebody wants to say no because it's easy, but no isn't where I start. No is where I start my negotiating because you obviously don't have either the ability or the authority to make the decision. So the next level is where I'm going to.
or
And
you're
that's what
just stupid.
It's, a lot of times, the
Yeah.
research, the work is hard to do. So it's like people don't want to jump in there and figure out how to fix it. They want to say, no, it can't be done. I don't believe that.
Yeah,
And-
well, and we don't like change, and we like to keep things the way that we've always, like you said,
yeah,
if
the
you
way
know,
we've always done it.
we've always done it that way. Why do you want to rock the boat? Why do you want to change things? Well, sometimes change is
necessary.
really good and it's really important, and that's why we have to do the changes, because the federal deficit, which is a whole topic of conversation right now in the world, right? Though I'm still confused on why we need to raise the debt ceiling if the deficit's been reduced. So I'm still a little confused on that part.
It's like a
But-
shell game.
Yeah. But if we have ways to do things that are more efficient and cheaper, because when people look at it, they always say, "Well, the government's paying for that. It's not my problem." Where does the government? I always get so frustrated because where does the government get the money?
Yes,
From you and
from
me, from our tax dollars. So
like
we
your
should all
income
have
tax
Right.
refund,
right.
Well, there
We
was
should
a-
all have a vested interest in making sure
100%.
that everything that we do is efficient, cost effective, and safe, and everything else that you're
Yeah.
talking about.
And you've both seen that, the mismanagement, the misutilization, being in the military, because it is the government. And,
Oh, yeah.
there's some things
It's not as bad as it was in the late 70s, early 80s when I was on active duty, but
There's less money to mismanage
Yes,
now, and
right.
so you have to be very conservative with your resources. I mean, like I grew up in the days when you took a new file folder and you, like when there was an inspection team coming in, you redid everything and bought new stickers and everything was brand spanking new. Now you're flipping that folder over and putting label stickers over top of it and reusing it. The interesting thing about us now is like when we became the state active duty, what happened with the border, all of those dollars are state of Texas dollars. And I think that's what a lot of people don't understand. When you activate the Army National Guard and the Air National Guard, that is all state of Texas funds. That is not getting reimbursed. So any other time in history when this has happened, we normally get activated for an emergency, right? So that's like 2 weeks max is what's always happened. And then it gets federalized. And so then the money comes back to the state, whichever, Louisiana, Jersey, whoever, the state gets their money back from FEMA. That is not the case now. Every dollar you see spent on that border, that's your tax dollars in the state of Texas tax dollars. So it's the right thing to do. We do need to be there. There is a crisis. Those immigrants need help. The cartel is dangerous. There is fentanyl every single day coming across the border. So, and when we saw it, I think I lived in a glass bubble and I didn't understand what was going on down there, and I didn't have a real clear, idea of what reality was. And then when you see it, you're like, oh, this is real. These are real human beings, and and when you look at these kids that are coming across, these are children. These aren't grown-ups. So there's undocumented minors that are coming across, but they have no other choice because where they're coming from is either a war-torn country, they're in famine, or they're going to be put into some kind of child labor. So they're coming here trying to seek some type of better life. Now there's the other side. There's some people that they got money, they're fine, they just want to get in the system. So there's two different sides to this. So it's like it's never cut and dry when it comes to the border. But the state of Texas is paying a lot of money to have a lot of people down there to try to catch as many of the bad people coming across as we can.
And with the border issue, we see and hear, I mean, it's on the news constantly, but Misty is somebody who has actually lived on the border, experienced it, with the 136
Yes.
air wing, or airlift wing.
Airlift Wing, yeah.
Airlift wing, and then you have to think about too. This is airlift wing, and then y'all are down there in Humvees. Y'all aren't down there in C-130s. but-
It's the first time that we've ever taken a group of people that were not trained and not equipped to do something and sent them to do a mission we weren't ready for. Did we do it? We did it 100%. Did we, kick butt and take names? Yes. We were the 432nd Expeditionary Wing, and then we had 4 squadrons. So my squadron was the Quattro Squadron, and I had 155 people. And some people had like up to 60 days notification they were going to deploy. And it went from we're going to send like 200 people down to we're going to send 10,000 people down. And so even the general that was in charge, and I couldn't tell you his name right now if you paid me money, but so the general was in charge. He's like, I had 2,000 people, and now I got 10,000 people. And so like his job went from okay to oh my gosh, so everybody had that same experience of we didn't know what we were getting into. And like I told you, I was in ACSC. I was trying to finish my dissertation. I'm like, I got one class to finish. For the love of God, leave me alone. But I got sent down there, and and as my colonel told me, so Colonel Camacho, he's now General Camacho, he told me, he's like, we had to lay out the people that we had, and who were the reservists, who were the traditionals, who weren't going to school, who didn't have this, and we had to pick. And he's like, he goes, you had already handled Conroe, so we already knew where you were going. I was like, thanks. When you do something well, you get tasked again to do something even better.
Could have finished that class if you'd been a slacker.
Yeah.
Because I know if I just didn't do my job well. But he told me, he's like, I knew you were the right fit for this position. And so like in each of the colonels at the time that were the wing commanders had to pick their people to throw them down there, and who was going to be the commanders, who was going to run the thing. And we got down there, we got people trained, and they went to, I think it was Camp Mabry, and they had to get weapons qualifications, and we had people come down there that had conditions where they shouldn't be there, so we were having to send people back and forth, and there was a lot of churn with it. But some of the guys got 5 to 10 days notice to go down there. I had 12 days notice to get my stuff packed, get my kids wherever they needed to be, and get down there. And so it was a very rapid deployment to get down there to try to basically plug a hole in a sieve.
And this was the first deployment that the 136 had done to the border.
In state active duty. So
Okay.
there's
How long ago
always
are we talking about? Is this current?
October 2021. Yeah.
Who's running the show down there now? Actively?
I don't know. I mean, it's still state active duty.
It's
so
not
it's
the
still
feds, the
no,
federals?
no.
As far as what
Yes.
your task was.
So here's what you have to know. Like, there's always been a federal mission down there, and there's always been people that have been federalized and have sat down there, and they usually work, with the Border Patrol. We are not allowed to work with the Border Patrol. So the Border Patrol, because they're federal, was told to leave us alone, and we have to do our mission because we are supposed to be observing and reporting people that are that are trying to get across the border, and also that are what's the word? They're just going into other people's property and they trespassing. Yeah, the people that are trespassing. And so we're just observing and reporting that. Now, at the same time, when the Border Patrol needed help, or if the state police needed our assistance, if somebody got into trouble, then we would deploy out there. I mean, there's times where we'd have 1,000 people coming across, and I got 2 guys standing there. So it's like we have to take everybody converge on that location just to make sure that we keep it calm and make sure everybody gets across.
for your protection too.
For our protection.
Is there
yes.
anybody getting arrested down there? Or are they
Yes.
just coming over?
Yeah, they're getting arrested. There's a lot of people.
And
We
when
can't
they're
arrest them.
arrested, what happens to them?
They go-
get sent back across?
Depends on what they're arrested for. Some people get deported, so like some of the minors will get deported if they get caught and sent back. So if it's a minor, they can go back the same day. If it's someone that has, like espionage or whatever, I mean, because we've got terrorists, there's everybody.
Well, I mean, they're
from,
breaking the law coming over to
Yes, they
start
are.
with, right?
Mhm.
So
Yes.
they should all be arrested.
the ones seeking asylum, no, but the ones that have a criminal past and have warrants and stuff like that, yes. So it just depends on what they're coming across for. The asylum seekers, they're allowed to come across and turn themselves in and say, hey, I need help. And, and we have people from everywhere. When we first got there, they asked me, like, how many different people spoke Spanish, spoke Mandarin. I was like, Mandarin? And sure enough, we had people coming over that were from China that spoke Mandarin, that were, trying to get into the country, and they were here
it's
to turn
easier
themselves
to
in.
go there than it is to go through the system.
It is. And it gets them in the system. And that's the hardest part where, before, you had the list, you had to get on the list, and then eventually you got brought here. Now you get on the list and you get sent out to wherever you're going, because most of the people that are coming here do have a family member or some connection. So, like, some of the kids that we got, there was a college kid and a high school kid. One kid had his family in Orlando, the other kid had his family in Chicago, but they found each other coming across and stayed together until they got to us. And then we had some Spanish speakers that were able to get their story and find out, where are you from? They were from Nicaragua. And like the girl that they were talking to, her mom was from Nicaragua. So she knew like how they got there. But yeah, at this point in time, they're either going into military service because there's like some unrest down there. So if you don't get out of the country and you're a young, male, then you're going into the military. So their only shot was to get to America.
And it's good to hear the task that you had with the 136, because every month at our Air Power Council meeting, we have a briefing. Colonel Jackie Vaughn gives us a briefing for the 132nd for Tang, and would say, well, they've got so many people deployed on the border. Well, what are they doing? But
Yeah.
it's good to hear that
They are
you're telling
physically
us.
there observing. Like we had, I want to say our group had 25. I think there's 25 Humvees for each one, and then we'd have two people, and like you would switch them out. So we tried to give them 8-hour shifts, but y'all know, like if you're security forces, you got 2 hours of getting there, arming up, getting out to the point, and then setting point, and then it's 2 hours de-arming,
That was
getting
a
back.
long day.
It was a very long day, and so we would try to do 8-hour shifts, but it was just like 8 hours on point, and then get the guys off there. But
This
yeah,
was 24/7.
24/7.
And you were there for 6 months, correct?
I was there, yes, 6 months.
Okay.
My other guys that deployed with me, I retired. So my whole thing was like I was done deploying, and I was like I'd done 31 years, and at this point, after COVID, which was like the mission creep kept happening, and this one the mission creep kept happening. I'm like, I want to go back to my life. I've done 31 years. I've given enough time. It was fun while it lasted, but this deployment wound up being 10 months for the guys that stayed the full time. And some of the guys are still down there, so other people they decided to stay and keep on the mission because there's some incentives to do that. The only problem I have with that is you don't get any state active duty, or you don't get any federal points for it. You don't get any federal,
Right.
like if you're trying to get your GI Bill, like you have to
Right.
do 90 consecutive days.
Yeah, it's
active
not a
duty.
Title 10, it's a
It's
Title
not a Title
32,
10.
right?
Yeah, you're
Yeah,
not getting
yeah.
that. And I don't know if this is true, but I believe it to be true that they don't get the Hazelwood Act as well. So the Hazelwood Act, you're supposed to get that if you sign up in the state of Texas, but you have to do so much active duty.
180 days.
So
But,
they're not
yeah.
getting that. So I've got to find that out. Like somebody told me, oh no, they're getting it. I'm like, you don't have a DD 214. You have nothing proving that you have done that
Looks like
duty. So
The Hazelwood Act, being a state of Texas
Mm-hmm.
act, it looks like it would cover.
we've got to
deployment
find
like
out
that.
what's
Yeah.
the fine print, and
Yeah,
if it isn't
yeah.
written, can
Because
it be
I
rewritten?
think Hazelwood, I think that there is a way to do that. But yeah, typically the way that the Hazelwood works is that the member, if they're going to school, which is, because this is what I did for a living in the military, was education and training. So I taught people how to go to school for free before I was a first sergeant. But the Hazelwood Act, technically, as long as you entered in the state of Texas, exited the state of Texas, your 214 shows, which is the problem when you are on a, so Title 10 orders are when a guardsman goes on a Title 10 orders, they get all that federal. But when they go on a Title 32 order, which is what the Guard, when they're deploying in support of the state,
We don't even get that Title 32.
you didn't even get that.
We don't even get that.
Because they have done some work
Yeah.
on getting the Title 32 to be applied. But the challenge is to prove to the school house, because what they have to do is they or their dependent children, because they can pass that on to dependent children now, have to take a 214 to the school, to the VA rep. And when you don't get a 214, this is where it becomes problematic. So there has to be a workaround to that. I would have to look more into it because I was reserved, so I never had to worry about it because I didn't have to deal with guardsmen that were trying to get their Hazelwood. But it is a state benefit, and so our guardsmen who are doing in excess of it, because it's 180 days total of active service. That includes their basic, their tech schools, it's not supposed to, but once you have other time, then you can include it. But it's only 180 days is all you have to have to qualify for it. So there has to be a way to make that work for those guardsmen.
And anybody that gets hurt down there, there's no VA benefits for them because it's on state active duty. So
Right.
you get state workman's comp, which has been a challenge. So a lot of the things that people assume with these guys that are on the border, like, and it's Army Guard and Air Guard, so don't just think it's the air. So the Army guys that are down there, there's 9,000 of them down there, 9,000 and something. And so those guys aren't getting that benefit either. And if you are a person like a federal employee like myself, and we had people from NASA, people from DCMA, USDA, FAA, if you are a federal employee and you go down on state active duty, you're not getting into that federal time. So that's affecting your retirement, that's affecting your TSP.
Wow.
Long term, it's affecting, your career on the federal side. And so I do believe in service, I do believe in going. However, you've got to make sure that there's some kind of parameters to ensure you're not harming somebody's future career. I mean, some of the guys were in the middle of college. So, and we were able during the COVID mission, we were able to make sure that those guys were able to stop and go take their classes. So we had several people get to graduate and finish. But when you do deploy people and these guys are think about if it's a nurse, if you're out in the middle of your clinicals, you don't get a do-over. You don't get to stop clinicals. You know, there's certain things where you just can't stop in the middle of it. So we'd have some people, a lot of people got out. I don't know the exact number of how many people got out of the Guard, but you saw a mass transition to the Air Force Reserves because the Air Force Reserves is federal. And so I do believe in the state mission. I do believe in us doing crisis management and things that we need to do. It's a fantastic mission if you have the heart for it, but you also have to evaluate how is this affecting the people. So think about it. We did COVID in 2020, so that was a massive amount of people taken out of their jobs and sent to do those missions, whether it was, doing PPE. So there was a lot of people that were running the warehouses for that. We were doing the testing. We were doing the shots. There was just like a massive amount of people deployed for that for an entire year. I don't know if anybody's still on COVID orders now. I know there was some right up till the border mission. I know there were still people on COVID missions still doing some of the COVID protocols. So those guys have been pulled out of their jobs, but that was all federal. So anybody on that was getting
Right.
their federal dollars, federal VA benefits, federal, any of the education benefits, they were all getting that. You do the state active duty, none of that applies and none of that
Yeah.
counts.
Yeah.
Now, when General Norris was in charge, she did ensure that we were all able to do our drills. And you could do your drills in place, because, think about it. You're in Brownsville and you got to get back to Fort Worth to come do a drill up here. It's a solid 8-hour drive on a good day if there's no traffic and no deer in the middle of the road. So there's no way to get here to do drill to get back down there because we had people working 3 shifts. So there was not a time that we could stop, send them home to do drill. And so we started working on making sure that any of their training that had to be done. And I know that
could do it there.
the 136 brought an aircraft down so that we could do some of the loadmaster training and some of the things. So there was a lot of effort with all of the different, the 3 different squadrons to make sure our guys still got trained. Now the Army, they're doing their mission. So they're not losing any of their training, any of their capabilities. Think about it. They're out there, they're doing stuff on trucks, they're running Humvees, the mechanics who are there, they're doing the mission they already have.
Right.
Air, completely different. Think about it. You're a sensor operator and you're not flying. Do you get your flight pay? Do you not get your flight pay? It's like, so there's all these things that happen that is different for an Air Guard member versus a Army Guard member.
Yeah.
So what kind of things did you see down there?
Nigels, is that what they're called? No, the big, it's a big animal that you can shoot.
But you saw a lot of the things that we hear about on the news.
Well, one of our guys, we had the ASOS group, and we had like a lot of ASOS members down there. So those are like the Air Force or the Air National Guard version of Special Forces. So they're out there running a mission. While they're running a mission, a boat comes up, a truck comes up. These guys are offloading stuff. They arrest them. Obviously, they don't have the arrest authority, but they were able to stop them and get the Border Patrol to come get them. It was like a drug run. So they were dropping, I don't know if it's fentanyl or if it was marijuana, but they were dropping drugs. And so our ASOS guys were able to stop and prevent that right there on the beach. So it's stuff that you just wouldn't believe is happening. We had guys that delivered babies right there on the border. It's like, they're carrying women across. And so they're coming through the Rio Grande, and there's certain areas where, like, there's a hill they have to go up. But, our guys would be picking up people and carrying them across, and a woman, like, water broke all over them. So
Because you said that some of them would wait until they
They
got
do,
into
yeah.
the United States.
yeah, the intent is to go into labor and to make it to the border to give birth
So
on
they
this
would
side.
give birth right out there on the border.
Is the Mexican military involved at all?
In certain circumstances, like when we had the Mexican Marines come in, nothing happened. Like the border crossing shut down. There was nobody. And I don't know who the Mexican Marines are, but they were fantastic. They came through, and when that happened, we had nobody crossing. at
They're
all.
the ones that Chapo tried to pay them off. They don't take payoffs.
No, they do not. Yeah, they were.
They grabbed his neck stronger and said, "Jail for you, buddy."
Yeah, they were
Yeah.
very impressive when they came through, and like they moved them around to different areas, depending on where the hot spots are. So when they came through, we had nobody. The guys were very bored that week. So
Yeah, they've got
Yeah,
a
they need more of them on the border.
yes.
So you see a lot
I think
of,
when Trump was in there, they had more of them on
Yeah,
the board.
I think they did.
so you saw a lot of women, a lot of children
Yes.
coming across, and
yeah,
a lot
and
of sad things.
there's a lot of family units that are coming across, and this is what I tell people. It's like it's the weirdest thing when you find out how it's ran. So like the cartel has people, and they have like these, like the bracelets you get like at the fairgrounds and stuff. So, and they put the bracelets on them, and so like they can scan them, so they have scanners, so they know which coyote, which cartel you belong to, if you paid, if you haven't paid. They bring you over, they drop you off. The coyotes are right across. They're talking to us while there's like, hey, I got 4 coming over. So this isn't
They're
like
telling you that.
yeah, they're talking to us just like, they know we're there. We know they're there. There's no hidden agenda here. They know, and they're making sure that we know what's coming across. There's some evil ones, where they do things to see what our reaction will be. So when we lost the one soldier and stuff like that, and he drowned, it is a very dangerous river. So the Rio Grande, people have this misconception about it. Depending on the time of the year and whatnot, that is a fast-moving river. There's, we have boats going up and down it, but it's like, our service members are going to go in to try to save, a person if they see them struggling.
Right. They're
They're wearing 37 pounds of gear. So depending on what day it is, and if they can't get their flak vest and stuff off fast enough, I'm positive now they've told them you cannot go in. And like when we talked about that when we were down there, it's like we need life vests. We need to be able to put them on before we even let somebody get near that water, just in case, because you just don't know. And the part of the ground can give way, and you can wind up in the water not really intending to. But yeah, there's people coming across that don't swim, can't swim. Dads carrying their kids, moms carrying their babies. I mean, it is just heartbreaking. And then when you, especially during the summer, when you see they are dehydrated, they're exhausted. And I, honest to God, believe there was people busing people. There are literally people walking from whatever country they came from, which could be Panama, Nicaragua, Guatemala, wherever, and they're walking. And they're walking the entire way.
Things I've seen in pictures of are these people, and all they have is just a little bag or
Yeah.
something. It's not like you saw in Europe whenever they carrying all their
And
worldly
we make them
possessions.
drop everything that they have in their hands, and when they get on the buses and stuff like that, they're not allowed to take anything with them. And that's one of the most heartbreaking things when you have to take a stuffed animal out of a kid's hands, but you don't know what's in the stuffed animal. So it's that we've got to err on the side of caution versus let a kid
Yeah,
carrying
we
something.
still have to protect American citizens,
And you got to
right?
protect. I mean, if it's fentanyl or whatever, and that's one of the things that we talked about when we did I was a training class through Texas A&M about the different drug paraphernalia and the way that things happen. And like the new fentanyl that's been manufactured, Narcan doesn't even touch it.
Right.
So it's like if our guys grab somebody and they have fentanyl in there and wound up getting on their skin, it absorbs straight into your skin. So
Right.
it's like the danger that the people are in is so much more than what we would assume. And the people coming across, some of them are fantastic, amazing human beings that are going to get to this country and get to work and do some amazing things, because this country is made from immigrants. So I know we're going to have a lot of people that do great things. There's also some very scary people that
Do they give these people social security numbers when they come over?
not that I know of. So would they go
They need
into
to.
yeah, they go into a system and they start working through the system, but past the part of where we apprehend them and get them and turn them over to the Border Patrol, that's the last part that we have any insight on.
I was at CVS picking up a prescription this weekend. A lot of pharmacies in the schools are giving Narcan out free.
Yep.
Right.
Are they really?
I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
did you know that?
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
So I
because
said,
the
sure.
problem has gotten so bad that they
I said,
are
sure, and
teaching.
they gave me
Yeah.
2 cans of it.
Yeah,
and
they've
they-
got school nurses that are teaching the young people how to apply Narcan if their buddy goes down next to them.
Yeah,
And the Narcan looks like Percocet, Vicodin, or anything else. So it doesn't look like, it's not like when you see, not Narcan, the fentanyl. The fentanyl doesn't look like something that you think it's going to look like. It's not some special thing and you're like, oh,
Yeah, it's
that's
not
fentanyl.
scary.
It looks like Percocet. It looks like Vicodin. It looks like, any other type of pill that kids have been popping for years, but now they're lacing it with the fentanyl, and 2 minutes. You got 2 minutes max, and they're done.
they say they got it in gummies now. It's gummy bears.
Yep.
Wow, my question is, why do they put something out that kills their customers? I don't understand that. That's not a good business plan.
It certainly
But I mean,
isn't.
really, it's
No,
a
it's
business.
not.
It's a business, but
Right.
you're pushing a product that kills your customers. What?
Maybe they've got a funeral home or something. that
Yeah.
they've got
I
a
mean,
partnership
There's
with.
always ulterior motives, because a lot of that's coming over from the fentanyls coming over from China and making
That's
its
exactly
way
what I was
in.
going to say.
And
They don't intend to have
no,
long-term customers.
no, they're, yeah.
Just amazing.
It's amazing all the things that you probably saw. I mean, I can't imagine.
Well, think of the
down there.
people's personal property. Just you hear the stories, and I'm
Yeah.
sure you
It's
saw some of that
trespassing
I was-
with people that have a ranch and they can't even let their kids go outside and
Yeah.
play because of the people crossing over.
You were
And I
telling
mean,
us-
there's hundreds and thousands that are come across. Like in one area, you can have 1,000 people show up, and what do you do with 1,000 people? And you can't stop them. So if they just keep going, and while we were out there, we sat on King's Ranch, and King's Ranch has their own security and stuff like that too. But there's still people coming through, and you have people that are walking across, from the pastures to the some of the farmland and stuff like that. So there's different crops that are being utilized down there. But if people are trampling your crops, then you're losing, millions of dollars. So it's like, it's affecting the farmers, it's affecting the cattlemen, it's affecting, the high fence ranches and, hunting and fishing and stuff like that. So it affects everybody. And think about it, if it's your yard, y'all know any random human just walking through your yard is weird. Random humans that are, young age males coming through in a pack, that could scare you. And it's like, and some of them do have ulterior motives when they're coming here. They're not coming here to be friends.
Right.
And so, and like I was telling you earlier, the thing with the trafficking, it doesn't stop at the border. There are Americans trafficking those people here in the United States of America.
Yep.
They're working for the cartels, they're working for themselves. So people will go pick up people, and depending on which bumper sticker or sticker they have on the back of their car, they know who they belong to. And so from the gangs that are down there, I mean, there's just this elaborate web of people that are trafficking humans. And I know we're all blind to it because, like, when you live in, like I live in Roanoke, so you live in these nice little areas, you don't think about children and men and women being trafficked. But it's like, and it's not just for sex. There's other people being trafficked for labor.
Right.
Like, if someone can't speak English and you put them to work and you don't pay them, what are they going to do? Who are they going to call? They're not documented. So there's all kinds of things happening to these individuals that want to work, that want to get to America and have the American dream, but our infrastructure is not set up to help them do that. And so when we talk about, reforming immigration, we've got to reform getting them here, finding out what their skill sets are, helping them get into the workforce so they can earn the money, and not having other people take advantage of them and take money and and use them for free labor. And so there's ways to do this.
Yeah.
Well, it's a crisis, and it's something that
Yep.
It is.
I don't. It's like Humpty Dumpty. All the king's horses and all the king's men can't put it. back
Kamala
together.
Harris says it's not a crisis. The borders are secured.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're crazy.
I heard her say it.
Yeah.
And she's the vice president of the United States.
Well, and the wall, what's so interesting, and you have to go down there to see it. So there's this perception that, the border is this thing. The border is in a neighborhood.
Yeah.
It is a legit, there's houses right on this bank, there's a wall, and then there's a trail, and there's the border. That's it. It's not anything elaborate. It's not anything special. It's not highlighted. There's nothing there to prevent someone from walking across. The walls that we put up, the individuals scale those in 7 seconds. So anybody, and they do this with a backpack on there, when the ones that are wanting to run, that are not wanting to turn themselves in, that are not seeking asylum, they're usually running drugs if they're doing that. They go up those walls in 7 seconds and they're over. Our guys tried it. Our guys couldn't get up the walls. So we don't have the same skill set. But we would see people that would fall from there and, break their arm, break their leg. There was just all kinds of unbelievable injuries that happened. And it's like, and the weird thing is there's areas that are just open that they could walk around instead of having to climb. But, in their minds, they're trying to get into America, and they think that they can't just turn themselves in and just walk across. Now, some of them have, I guess, loaned themselves out in order to traffic certain things, like, whatever drugs it is. And if they don't do that and the cartel finds out about it, their family's in jeopardy.
Yeah.
So there's not an out for some of these people. They don't have an option of saying no. So.
It's crazy.
That's interesting take that you've given us on that, because I never have talked to anybody that's really been down there. I went down there on a tour with Lieutenant Colonel Alan West one time, but it wasn't like living down there for 6 months.
Well, some of the stuff that happened in the beginning was the most challenging. Is as we got people down there, for us, we were all in hotels. We're Air Force, that's how we lived. But the Army wasn't treated that way. The Army was stuck in trailers. You would have 16 to 20 people in a trailer with 2 bathrooms. So when you see some of those pictures that you look at, they're not kidding. That was real. That did happen. Some of the places we went, there was no porta potties. And as I told them, and I'm very graphic about it because I do not mince words, but I'm like, how do you want these girls to change their tampons? Let me know, because I would love to see your thoughts on that, gentlemen. So the guys are like, okay, we'll get porta potties. Because I'm like, you have to provide sanitary options for people. If I can't get them back to a bathroom, and you can't leave your post, you can't leave a Humvee, anybody can drive it off, right? So it's like, you cannot leave your post. We have to provide just the basic sanitary needs for anybody, whether it's male or female. So there was just things like that where we had to put some of those, protocols in place. But the Army, they were treated poorly in the beginning, and I think they're getting better now. But it's like, when I see other people that are like refugees treated better than my soldiers, I got a problem with that.
Yeah.
And so what you heard was not wrong. It wasn't exaggerated. It was true. do we need to be there 100%? But if we're going to be there, let's be there right. Let's build in the right infrastructure for people to be taken care of. And these are our sons and daughters. These aren't just random humans that we throw down there and treat them like dogs. You know, we have to treat them like the skilled professionals that they are and provide them the infrastructure for them to do the work they need to do. These guys are going to college. You know, these are Army kids that still have college to do and things like that. So on their downtime, they may need to be taking their online classes. We have to provide that opportunity for them. We can't just treat them as if they don't matter. And so that was one of the things that was one of the hardest parts in the beginning. And I just think we had individuals that may not have been looking at it from the perspective of, you know, Air Force people always go for comfort first. We're going to take care of our guys. We're going to have the
I wasn't going to
facilities.
bring that up. I was Army, so
Yeah, that's all right. You know, we all have choices.
Yeah,
choices.
But the Air Force is like that. We always make sure that there's some level of comfort so that people can do the things they need to do, and we treat them with respect. The Army, I think they push them very hard, and they don't think about their needs versus the Army needs. And so for me, that was one of those. Yeah, that was a tipping point where I'm like, okay. It's like, if we're gonna do this, then let's do it, but let's do it right. If we're gonna build camps, okay, let's build camps, but let's build Air Force version camps. You know, I told them so we could go to Boca Chica, put the, you know, camps on the beach. I'm like, if we're gonna do it, let's do it.
putting green and things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
You can't have an Air Force base without a golf course. It's impossible.
Don't be a hater.
Well, Misty, it's been a pleasure having you here today and telling us about all the different experiences that you've had, especially the border experience, because that's something that we're all concerned about.
Yep.
But, you know, it kind of lets us see how our fellow Americans and Texans are helping down there at the crisis, even if it's just standing there, you know, making sure that things are happening, you know, safely. But, you know, we really appreciate you and your service to our country. 31 years, I thought they had some kind of child labor law or something, but you must have snuck in.
I've had some work done.
We had some of those guys, World War II guys, that, you know, lied about their age and got in at 14, 15, so maybe that's what happened there. But Mary, we're glad to have you back. You've been out for a couple of weeks, and we're glad to have you back.
Yeah, I missed one because of the wonderful ice.
Yeah.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
right. We-
I was
Yeah,
supposed to
and
be
then-
on that one, yeah.
And then last week I had a little medical procedure that I had
Played
to.
hooky.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I would have much rather been here. Trust me.
Mary's always got a lot of things coming. You know,
So, but we do have a luncheon coming, right?
That's
So that's the really
and
critical thing.
One of our guests that we had early on, Randy Nance, who was an amputee,
Yeah.
he's going to be our
Yeah.
speaker at the luncheon. And are we still taking reservations?
We
or-
are. So we're getting close. I think the last time I looked, we were closing in on 400. So we still have some seats available. The RSVPs will close this Friday, and or sooner if we hit our limit. But I don't anticipate that's going to happen by Friday. We extended it out to Sunday last time, and we really ran into having some folks that we ended up with a few over our limit. But I leave a little cushion in there for the folks that don't typically do it. But remember, this Friday, you need to RSVP, go to roll-call.org, and I know it scrolls across on the screen, but make sure you go out there. If you've never attended a luncheon before and you want to make sure that we capture all your information, get you a name tag made and all that stuff, then make sure you also fill out the new attendee form. So you RSVP right there on the homepage. So go to the homepage, go below the picture and the mission statement, and you'll see a link in blue that says RSVP. Click it. It also has some other questions in there that you can actually link directly to that new attendee form. So it doesn't cost you a penny if you're a veteran. It doesn't cost anybody a penny to be a part of roll call. Anybody can join up, can come to the luncheon. It's free for veterans, and that's due to the generous contributions of a lot of sponsors that we have.
A lot of sponsors and a lot of donors.
A lot of donors. We've got a lot of individual donors even that contribute.
We're 501c3, so
Right.
we're a nonprofit. And this, I just want to tell you that we do accept donations.
Absolutely.
And one thing that we're doing right now, my birthday's coming up, and Facebook has provisions to have a birthday deal where people can donate to an organization of your choice. And my organization this year is for roll call. And, you know, $10 buys a veteran a lunch.
Exactly.
So if you want to take a veteran to lunch for $10, just make a donation to Roll Call. You can go to roll-call.org, or you can go to my Facebook page and make a donation there
Yep.
and feed a veteran. Have you ever been, Misty?
Absolutely.
I have not.
Oh, you're going to have
Apparently,
to.
I've never been invited to a lot of things.
Well, you're invited.
Yeah, so my husband, who, as we talked about this, you know, my husband does work for Misty, and he's planning on trying to have a field trip for a few of his guys to come to the luncheon, because my husband's never been to a luncheon, because he says it's my thing and he doesn't really want to interfere with anything, which I keep telling him he's not going to interfere with anything. But yes, so $10. If you're a non-veteran, what we ask is that you contribute the $10 toward the cost of the food. And the food is always great. Food is great. We do
Brenda
the
Linhart and her team do a magnificent job.
beautiful. And we serve lunch. You can't believe we served, 400, what do we have, about 470 last
Yeah.
month? And I think it took us about 10 minutes to have food, and we serve it at the table. Nobody has to get up and go through a line. Our we have the greatest volunteers in the world. They don't even have to get up to get their drinks. The volunteers will put everything right in front of the veterans. You want to meet some World War II, Korea, Vietnam, we got them all. So come on out, join us, and have a good lunch. And hear Randy, and he is, from the hour we spent with him and the time we spent with him before that, Randy's going to be a great speaker.
And
Yeah, he's a good speaker.
next week's guest is going to be Jimmy Polizzani. And Jimmy is the spokesman for the Fort Worth Police Department. He's the president of the Brotherhood for the Fallen, an organization that takes care of the fallen police officers and their families.
Right.
And he's also the owner of Cafe Republic. And they do a lot of nonprofit stuff over
They
there.
do.
And help a lot of people out. So we're looking forward to that.
That's where the Don Graves table
That's
is.
it. Don
Jimmy
Graves-
and his
Don
family
Graves
own
eats
that
breakfast
restaurant.
there almost every morning.
Breakfast and most of the time lunch.
And Larry, thank you so much for all you do for our community and for certainly sponsoring our show. Classic Auto Detail is right here with Fort Worth Memories. And you just come down here and hang out with Larry sometime. You can
Sure.
learn a lot of stuff. I mean, and most of it's good that you teach. You know?
Yeah,
But we appreciate you. You're a great citizen of our
we should have
community.
started it
We
5
should
years
have.
ago.
We should have. But we got it going
We
now.
missed a lot of,
And we're going
That's
to
all
try
right.
to.
We got to it. We just missed, of course, the Carmens and the Fisks. and
Larry's
the-
he's got us a Tuskegee Airman. That
Yes.
we're going to have to do remote whenever we do it, but we're
Nice.
going to try to have one Tuskegee Airman
he's
on the show.
96 or 95.
We have one of our roll call members who's working with a gentleman that he knows to try to get one of the Tuskegee Airmen to a luncheon to speak.
That'd be good.
That
So
still lives here.
No, he doesn't
No.
live here. I
Oh.
think he lives in New Jersey.
That's
But-
the guy. That's the
So-
guy.
so-
This is the guy he's
So
talking to,
because
too.
His son, they own a metal deal up there.
yeah, so one of our roll call members works with
That's
a
funny, 'cause
relative of
Larry's
his.
been talking to him,
Right,
too.
yeah. So we're actively working on trying to bring him
Have the guy
in.
booked for 2 shows and not know
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, he said his son said he's pretty vocal about they didn't get good planes and all
No,
that.
no,
Yeah.
I mean, that,
But it's history. It's true.
Yeah. So what we may do is we may try to work the deal where we can bring him in,
and have a live
have
show.
a live show,
Yeah.
and keep him here through the Friday lunch
that'd be
and
great.
send him home. So
Yeah, that'd be great.
things to work on.
He's
So
one
we need lots of people to go to Rick's birthday fundraiser so we can afford to bring him in. And
Just
of
$10.
course,
I
we'll-
mean,
There's only supposedly 42 of them
There's
left.
not
yeah,
many.
there's not very many.
And the son told me that his dad's in great shape.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
Said, I hope he doesn't embarrass any of your
He
listeners.
won't embarrass us.
Won't
Huh?
embarrass us, that's for sure.
Misty, thank you so much for being here
you
on
for having
Hometown Heroes today, and it's a pleasure meeting you.
Nice meeting you.
And thank you for sharing your stories with us. Mary, thank you for being back with us, and thank
Yay.
you for all you do, because I see a lot of the work that Mary does behind the scenes, and she's one of the hardest working people I know, and has such a passion and a heart for taking care of veterans in the military.
demanding on the workers.
She is.
Me?
Yeah.
That's what they tell me. I don't know.
I don't. You must be talking about the board because the volunteers don't say that. But
Larry, thanks again for all you do.
My
'cause,
pleasure.
You know, you're the sounding board for the community, for the nation, and you made this possible for us. So, and
My
guys
pleasure.
back there on the board and the cameras, Dusty and Tyler, thank you all for being here every week, and thank you for all you do. And y'all do a great job. And we will see you next week on Hometown Heroes with Jimmy Polizzani.
There won't be Halloween next week. It'll
No,
still be
what-
Valentine's.
Yeah, that's right.
I'll be looking for my flowers and candy for me.
Yes.